evening, cult members, and welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
And welcome to our reaction, discussion, review of episode 4 of Secret Invasion. There will be spoilers. We've talked about this in the past. It's a spoiler discussion, and we don't know where we're going to go when we start. To start, we all told you Gaia wasn't dead.
Right. Super Skrull.
She at least has Extremis, which makes me believe, at least the way they presented it, is she only took the Extremis strand.
Oh, okay. I didn't really realize that it was.
I think they only showed the Extremis vial that she put in the machine.
Okay.
And she went and stood in there and got electrified.
So she doesn't have Groot and whatever else was
Black Obsidian, and yeah, but I think she did. They present it as she mind read the scientist who was in the capture thing, who the scroll is doubling as. I'd like them to explain that. They don't have to, but I'd like them to explain that. But she at least knew, she knew what kind of the steps to do real quick and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think she also knew that she was not going to be safe, and so because she kind of had an idea of what was going on in there, and the Extremis thing is to kind of keep her safe. Ta-da!
Right. Well, and I mean, honestly, all the bad guys have this stuff, so we need some of the good guys to have it too, or there's no fighting. There's, they're just gonna.
Yeah, they're gonna be out. The average Skrulls and humans are not going to be able to fight
to win.
At all, especially since they have Extremis and they can heal.
Right.
And so they have to blow them up in a towering inferno of Iron Man suits. Apparently, is the only
right. Well, and it's interesting because from what we saw of Extremis, it wasn't stable, right? So
yeah,
have they fixed that? Were they even aware of that?
Aldrich Gideon seemed to have it under control. He was able to control it, but he was one of the few, and his right hand guy were like the two that seemed like they were the ones who could control it. But everybody else that they tried to give it to when they were in that experimental stage wasn't able to control it.
Well, and then
Gravik?
No, Tony's wife.
Oh, Pepper.
Pepper, there we go. She had it and then she didn't.
Yeah, Tony, that's the epilogue in that movie that I wish they would have spent more time explaining, is that he was able to figure out how to remove it from her.
Right. So is that something that Fury knows about? Is that...
I'm not going to say he doesn't. But he didn't know until this episode at the end that Gravik had Super Skrulled up.
Right, but I mean, he's got. It might be something they can use. There's 2 episodes left.
I believe so. Yes.
So we need to move that along, or there's not going to be a resolution, and this is just what we're going to be dealing with when we go forward into the movies.
I think ultimately I'm okay if that's what they decide to do, is that this unknown, unseen, unaccounted for entity is in the background of everything as we go forward, to make you question all the stuff that's going to happen in Phase 5. And so it's another layer, including the Eternals, including what we know is coming with Deadpool and Wolverine, and I find it interesting they're layering a bunch of this different stuff as they're going forward. They have the cosmic stuff, they have the supernatural stuff, and they have the street level stuff, and they're all interacting with each other. And Kang's out there, so
right.
So what happens if Kang figures out that he could super scroll up. Not that he's not powerful as it is,
Uh,
but I'm glad that they did. I'm glad they set it up that way with Gaia, and then came back around and said, "Okay, she actually is alive." Because I like that character. I like her meaning, and then her conversation with Talos later on. Her as a young person, she understands that she wants to be more open about who she is, and her dad is like, "If we save the world, we will be allowed to be who we are as a bargaining chip, not necessarily."
Right.
And she doesn't agree with that.
I'm with her.
I'm agreeing with her.
Just read any news headline.
Yeah.
Currently, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and so I find it very interesting that they're taking this angle of the older, which is going on right now. The older generation. There's only one way of doing things, and this is all you can do. You have to get student loans and then never pay them off. You have to buy a house, but you can't afford one. Like that whole conversation. If we do what we're supposed to do and present ourselves to be a good people, we will get something out of it. And Gaia is coming from the other direction of where has this been proven that as we sit right now that's actually what we're going to get.
I think it's more. I mean, Talos just he doesn't have an answer.
Yeah,
like he's tried to figure out how to find some place for them, and they have every planet that they've gone to, the bad guys have blown it up. So he's just he's like, this is, I got all my eggs in this basket because I don't have any other options. I don't know where Gaia has so what are her options?
Right.
She can either follow her dad or follow Gravik.
Right.
I mean, what's the middle ground here?
I don't know if there is a middle ground. I think she really ultimately wants to find her own place. She wants to find her own house, which that house happens to need to be a planet. And but she hasn't been through the struggle of trying to find a place. That was Dad. Dad was in that struggle. And Mom was in that struggle. And she hasn't really, at least the way they presented it, hasn't been in that struggle of trying to find their own.
Well, she went with them.
Yeah, but she's, she was a kid when all that was going on. So they were going on an adventure. They weren't, understanding the.
Yeah.
The
I mean, but she asked him, what's your plan? And he told her, and she didn't like that answer. And so she left. So what's her plan?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
and they don't present it in this episode, which is fine. Like, this was a shorter episode. It was 38 minutes with the credits, and we know there's 18 minutes of credits. There's all the different versions and all the blah, blah, blah. But they did not present it in this episode where they're like this is what she wants. They presented what she wants, but they didn't present how she thinks she's going to get
right.
And that's the next step for her. And after everything that happens with Talos at the end, and his being removed off the board, I'm not going to say he's dead, because each because each episode is ended with a death, and so I'm not there to say he's dead until I say it in the show.
Yeah,
just because his body is motionless on the ground doesn't mean that he's been shot before, he's been stabbed before,
right.
So it could be a play between him and Fury if things got bad.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And we're Hill, or they keep showing Colby Smulders' special guest appearance or whatever of Colby Smulders at the end of every episode.
Yeah.
But she's supposed to be dead. So why do they keep showing that?
Right. They keep showing that, and she's IMDb credited for all 6 episodes. It could just be a contract thing that she was able to get. Right. I'm totally cool if that's what it is.
Yeah.
But it makes me question, especially with Gaia not really being dead at the beginning of this episode, and now we know that Extremis is on the board. Garrick didn't die from the face shot. So it's I'm questioning everybody that's on, that's on, that's
which
there.
is probably the point.
So I don't, and the way Fury leaves Talos and takes the president out from the attack, he's your closest friend that you have left on Earth. You don't try to go at least pick him up and put him in the car.
Yeah, I thought that was
It feels like another play, and it's Fury. That's why I'm always like it's Fury. So he's thinking 9 steps ahead of everybody else, anyways.
Right. Although they keep trying to pass him off as past his prime, and blah blah blah. Although again, they did sort of show a little bit in this episode that he is not as incompetent as everybody's been playing him off. He bugged
Priscilla,
her,
his wife,
her or her purse or something. He bugged so that that he could listen in on the conversation between her and Rhodey.
Yeah, and
so now,
and he broke into Rhodey's. We'll get into that one. We'll get into Rhodey here next, but Rhodey's apartment, like he broke in, like
right, and then
suite or whatever,
and then Mickey'd his bourbon with liquid tracker. So
he even told him he was going to do it.
Well, he said, he's like,
you're going to poison me. Liquid tracker, though.
No, he said nanotech.
Nanotech. Yeah, right, he did say that. Let's talk about Rhodey. In the previous episode, someone calls Priscilla. We didn't figure it out until after we had recorded our episode that it was actually Rhodey who actually was the one on the other end. I thought it was Gravik's second hand.
Yeah.
But it was Rhodey. It was Rhodey.
It was Scrody.
Scrody.
No,
that doesn't work either. So bad. PG-13 around here. So he goes and meets Priscilla. Pretty much tells this is Gravik's plan. You need to kill Fury, making Priscilla do it. And then Priscilla tries to talk. I wanted to say Scrolly again, but Scrody, but it doesn't work.
But you did anyway.
I did anyways. She tells him, he's not the same person as he was after the blip, and he's not really a factor, and we shouldn't be killing him because she does care for him. Yep. And Rhodey did it again. Kind of talks like this was the plan all along.
Yeah.
Like kind of thing.
Yeah. Which again kind of feeds into the whole if Fury's showing everybody that he's not the guy he used to be, so they all kind of underestimate him potentially.
Yeah.
And it's working even with Rhodey because he told it, or maybe there's nanotech. It's exactly what he did, but he didn't believe that that's what, he didn't believe that he could get there. He could do that. So it's working. It's frustrating because for us, we're like, just Nick Fury this thing and let's get on with it. And that's not.
That's not happening. It is happening. It's not happening at the speed in which we want it to happen. The break in to the apartment and they make a point of showing the bourbon. Sorry, I've actually had not that bottle of whiskey, but I've had that brand of bourbon before, and it's
not the $1,000 bottle,
$5,000 a bottle,
$5,000,
whatever. But before that break in, we get a shower scene of a female Skrull in their natural form in the shower, and that female Skrull walks out and turns into Rhodey.
Right.
Or wipes the mirror.
Yeah.
And she's all happy with her natural form. She wipes the mirror, and then it's Rhodey's day.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have been talking about the fact that this Rhodey is a Skrull for a bit. And New Rockstars has been talking about the friendship that Rhodey had with Tony and that emotional arc. So they believe, and I'm gonna back them up on this, as the secondary person, that they took him after everything that happened in Endgame.
After the funeral.
Yeah. To start their big master plan was and everything.
So the only other time we see him is in Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yes, and he's much more of himself there.
Yeah, but that was pretty close after the funeral, right?
It's pretty close. Yeah.
After the funeral, and you really didn't see him much. He was in that end scene, right, when they're
yes, yes,
when he's got all the stuff and he says,
I still think that version is our version.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm just trying to. Yeah. So, and we don't really know. I mean, I guess we do, but I don't. Where we are, kind of in the we've been trying to, Tony died. How far? Like with WandaVision, how far? How many months, weeks, whatever since Tony's died are we?
Right.
So I don't.
I think this is 20.
I thought it was 2025.
I think it's 2025 in that time period.
So when did Tony die in MCU years? 2023?
2019. Because there's a 5-year gap. No, he dies in 2022, 2023. When's Endgame happen? I don't remember off the top of my head.
Sorry, I'm asking all the hard questions.
So whenever Endgame came out, so whenever I think that was 2019 when that came out.
Yeah.
So that's when Tony died.
But that wasn't 2019 in MCU years.
Yes, it was.
I thought they were always like a couple years ahead of us.
No, they were. Okay. No, you're right. They were until 5 years later. So Infinity War happens in 2018.
Right.
5 years later.
Oh, because of the blip.
Because of the blip, they go 5 years in the future.
Right. So they would have been like 2022.
2022, 2023, and somewhere in that time period.
So we are about 2 years after.
So
there's all kinds of stuff.
Be nice in the comments, but I think our math is correct there. I was told there was no math on this show.
Sorry.
But I think our math is pretty close, where the events of WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier are
right after,
like 4 to 6 months after everything happens, and then everything's kind of been including No Way Home. Yeah. Everything's kind of been cascading in the future timeline for us,
right? And
we've been slowly catching up with them,
right? So I'm just like
somewhere in there, yeah.
So basically, we think that there's been about 2 years since Tony died,
right?
And now in the Secret Invasion time,
yeah.
So there was 2 years where that stuff could have been happening, and then we're gonna have to like red string this after the fact, because you got to think about like Wakanda Forever and Val and all of that stuff. Like when did that?
How that's all playing out? I think the stuff that happens with the stuff that's happening with Val is essentially in timeline order, like a year or 2 years in front of us, but that's all happening in succession. So U.S. Agent is her first meeting in Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then she meets Elena at the end of Black Widow. Like all of that stuff is in chronological order, and so as we get to that point where she sets up the Thunderbolts, I think that's all going to be 2026 in the actual storytelling
in MCU years.
Which also means that can.
That's what I was saying.
Red string.
We're gonna need a red string because what if Val's a Skrull?
Because I think they say because I think they say 2 years after Endgame is when T'Challa dies of cancer.
Okay.
And so that makes that 2025. But I think this show is 2026, 2027.
I thought it was 2025.
Somebody needs to tell us. So,
sorry.
We're going to go down this rabbit hole, and now we're stuck.
Rhodey.
Scrody. Going back to Scrody. Him telling Priscilla to kill Fury, and then she going home, and he has the ring off because he was listening in on the Bluetooth. Their conversation with each other is very much two people who have fallen for each other, who are on opposite sides of the line. Very old school, um, Cold War um, kind of storytelling
Yeah.
where opposites attract and whatever.
Yeah.
The uh, conversation over tea. Did you get what you wanted? What was who? Why did you take this person's body?
Yeah.
And like that whole, it was very romantic and very cool and very well done. And they both laid out their cards, their guns on the table, and the their resolution was to shoot each other, which in the grand scheme of things, again, would have been very romantic that they took each other out and the show's over. But that's not what happened. They both missed on purpose because they
Right.
both care for the other.
Right.
And I love the line. All that setup is I don't know if we should get a divorce, renew our vows.
Right.
Because they actually really do love each other.
Right.
But they are on opposite sides of the same fight.
Yeah.
And it was just a really fun, slow down, think about what's being said, think about what this means for the two of them because they've been together for so long, and they came to a resolution. I love her asking, "Would you have loved me if I stayed the way I went, well, the way I am?" And I love Fury's response of getting up and leaving, and then coming back and saying, "I guess we'll never find out."
Yeah.
Because I think he was going to say yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's a difficult question. I think he was probably thinking the same thing I was. I was like, how would you answer that?
Yeah.
Because you don't know. Because you didn't. That didn't happen. And so when he left and came back and said, "I guess we'll never know," is the exact right answer. We'll never know because we didn't do it.
And that's the guys at work are always like, "Would you have a threesome or would you do this?" And I'm like, I don't know. I've never been presented with that kind of thing, so I can't sit there and say how I'm going to react.
Yeah.
And so I don't. I have a maybe or maybe not, but we never been through that experience. It's whenever you have the time and experience with something that you'll know how you're going to respond to that thing,
right? Or be given the opportunity, like have it, presented to you, so that you have to
have at least a moment of going, yeah, I think or the circumstances at the time is different than circumstances at the time before, and all that kind of conversation. So it's always, I love that that's the answer,
right?
Because that is the answer.
Yeah.
You just don't know,
right? You could say yes, but is that true? Or you could say no. I mean, yeah.
And I love the warning that he gives her too. They're going to be coming for you.
Yeah.
And she's like, "I'm a big girl. I'm going to take care of myself." So even though she knows that she chose Fury over Gravik, and it's going to cost her, she knew that was the right choice for her, and not necessarily for the cause.
Yeah, I just wonder what I mean.
I think that takes her off the board. I really do think that takes her off.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I don't think we'll see her again in this episode or in this show.
Right.
Yeah, and so I guess we'll just be left to wonder whatever happened to her or whatever. Maybe maybe she'll come back again.
And then she shows up in Thunderbolts as a Super Skrull sleeper agent for something else.
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the attack with the president. The president goes to the UK. They're going to have a sit down meeting with the Russians. Rudy tells the president that you need to be steel and be strong against the Russians because he's the catalyst. He's the right-hand man for the president who's trying to start the war.
Right.
Gravik is doing a bunch of other stuff.
Right.
But Rhodey is the one who's actually the one who is trying to poison. He's Worm Tongue.
Yeah. Right.
And he's poisoning the president's ear.
Except it backfired because he drank a little too much of the bourbon.
The bourbon, right. Which
so
I love
like,
that the president called that out.
Yeah.
And then the attack happens. Gravik leads the attack, speaking in Russian the entire time. And they get him caught in a killing box. Rhodey gives up the information about which vehicle the president is in. Right. And then sits in the car waiting for everything to get done.
Right.
Which I just thought was funny of letting Don Cheadle sit in a car for a few seconds and just like blankly look off of it. There's gunfire going on behind him.
You guys don't look at explosions.
Right. And then we get Super Skrull Gravik with the Groot tentacle arm, which we saw in the trailer. We knew it was coming.
Yep.
He squeezed the guy to death, and then after he stabs Talos, Fury hits him in the chest once, which was a vest, and then hits him in the face, and that's when Fury finds out that he's got the Extremis, and it heals.
Yep.
And the face, I actually am going to use the thumbnail, is the face that that Fury gives, and it's just wide-eyed, like, oh, we're in trouble.
Yep.
And that, I think, wild speculation, somewhat irresponsible. Seeing that for Fury is going to make him make phone calls. Now, who he calls in is up for debate. We can go on a deep dive of who could show up, but he now knows, and his right-hand guy, Talos, is gone. And so, or we think is gone. He can no longer fight this fight, and he knows part of that whole conversation with Rhodey about the whiskey and help a brother out and get my job back and all that kind of stuff is him pretty much going to him and like saying, I know you're a Skrull, without saying, I know you're a Skrull.
Yeah, because he turned around and showed him a doctored whatever video of him.
It's the real video because it was Gravik as Fury.
Was
shot
he?
Maria.
Oh,
yeah, it was.
I just remember Fury seeing him standing there.
Yeah,
that's right, because Maria saw him
and
as Fury, and then he shot her. So yeah, that's right.
And then she said it was you. So Fury seeing that we have Super Skrull Gravik, not knowing if there's any more out there other than what we know as the audience that Gaia's got the Extremis.
Right.
It like that. It feels like the final push catalyst for him to call for help because he's taken this. He's compartmentalized this thing the entire way to try to keep it as under wraps as possible. But as soon as Talos got shot in the shoulder and was trying to break the glass to get the president out, and he started to change into his natural form, some of the British officers who were there to help, who showed up as reinforcements, tried to attack him, and Fury's like, no, he's with us. So I think that just leads to the conversation of what is next for Fury. He cannot take this fight on by himself anymore.
Right.
So who does he call?
Yeah, and he is by himself because, he would have normally gone to, to S.H.I.E.L.D. or whatever. And that's none of that's there.
Sword is still a hot mess. Now, we could get... I've been saying Monica Rambeau makes the most sense because of his connection with Sword, S.H.I.E.L.D., and that she was asked to come buy a Skrull operative to go to save her. So there's a relationship there, there's a connection there that makes the most sense. So Monica showing up seems like that would work. But Monica and Fury on their own are not going to be able to go against multiple Super Skrulls.
Yeah, yeah.
And so what does that mean? Like, and I love the fact that we just don't know. We can wildly speculate about who we think is going to show up. I think it's going to be Captain Britain because they've been filming in the UK the entire time. So, or the story has been pretty much all in the UK.
Yeah.
So I feel like Captain Britain makes the most sense, played by Henry Cavill. He's got free time. But who else could be there and who else makes sense?
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair to the story if Fury beats them on his own. I've said this in the past.
Right. He can't. He can't.
Yeah. It weakens his attempt to assemble the Avengers.
Right.
If he beats the Super Skrulls on his own.
Right.
And that that's why he built this whole system up of the Avengers to have this kind of thing covered.
Yep.
And now he's been trying to keep it secret because he's trying to keep his friends safe and keep them out of the public eye and keep his scrolls safe and all that kind of stuff. And now that's not
well,
there.
and it's all ramped up much bigger than he thought, because he gets here and all of a sudden there's a million scrolls instead of just the couple hundred or whatever that flew off. So
and the tension on the planet right now of what Gravik has been doing, and now the Russians attacked the president on England soil, so the English are now going to head questioning what the Russians are doing. So there's just too much going on for him to do it on his own. Again, I don't think Talos is dead, but I don't know where we're going next. I don't know where the next 2 episodes is. I'm trying to think of anything else that kind of dropped in this episode where we kind of need to talk about it. But that's kind of all the major big parts that was there. I've said this on TikTok and on social media a couple times. I'm loving this show.
Yeah.
And I
we
just
don't know what's happening. We don't know what's going to happen next.
And I just think that some people are kind of sleeping on the show, because of everything that's going on. The writer's strike, the pending actor strike, MCU fatigue, the stuff that's going on with DC, and some people being upset with certain franchises and all the discourse and all that kind of stuff. I think people are just like sitting back on, like, no, I don't want to watch it because I don't want to deal with it, which is fine. I get it, but this show is good. Let us know what you thought of this episode called Beloved of Secret Invasion in the comments down below. Please be nice. That's a requirement around here. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and follow us on all the social media stuff, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Links are in the description down below. And until next time, cult members, good afternoon, good evening, and good night now.